Kung Fu is known around the world as one of the most iconic martial arts, but the real story behind it is far richer than what you see in films or hear in legends. The term Kung Fu, or Gong Fu in Chinese, doesn't originally mean fighting. In its true sense, it refers to any skill that comes from years of effort, dedication, and discipline. A chef, a musician, or an artist could all be said to have Kung Fu in their craft. Over time, however, this word became closely tied to Chinese martial arts because of the intense commitment required to master them. The traditional Chinese name for martial arts is actually Wushu, which means martial technique or military art. The roots of Kung Fu reach back into China's earliest days, long before history was written down. Thousands of years ago, life was a constant struggle for survival. People had to defend themselves from wild animals, rival tribes, and other dangers. They learned how to strike with their hands, kick, block attacks, and wrestle opponents to the ground. They also developed simple weapons, first made from wood and stone, later from bronze, including sticks, spears, and blades. Archaeologists have found evidence that during the Shang dynasty, between 1600 and 1046 BCE, Chinese warriors already trained in wrestling, archery, and various forms of armed combat. These skills were not only for battle, but also essential for hunting and protecting communities. As Chinese society developed, combat techniques began to merge with philosophy. Between the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, during the Warring States period, two major schools of thought deeply influenced the culture: Confucianism and Taoism. Confucianism taught discipline, respect, and the importance of moral character, while Taoism, founded by Laozi, emphasized living in harmony with nature, balancing body and mind, and working with the natural flow of energy, known as qi. Taoist breathing exercises, meditation, and fluid movements eventually shaped how martial arts were practiced, turning them into something more than just fighting. Training became a way to build strength, sharpen the mind, and develop inner balance. By the time of the Han Dynasty, from 206 BCE to 220 CE, martial arts in China had become more structured. The Han military trained its soldiers in both armed and unarmed combat. Detailed manuals explained the use of weapons like the spear, sword, and staff, as well as different hand-to-hand techniques. Wrestling, known as shuaijiao, was a favorite sport and even performed at the imperial court. Around this time, martial arts also became linked with traditional Chinese medicine. Fighters learned how the body's muscles and joints worked, how to target pressure points, and how regular training could improve health and extend life. One of the most legendary chapters in Kung Fu's story began in the Northern Wei dynasty in the 5th century CE. In the year 495, Emperor Shaolin built the Shaolin Temple in Henan province for Buddhist monks from India. Several decades later, around 527 CE, an Indian monk named Bodhidharma, called Dharmo in Chinese, arrived at the temple. Legend says he found the monks in poor health after spending long hours in still meditation. To help them, he created a set of exercises now known as the 18 Arhat hands. These movements combined elements of Indian yoga, breathing methods, and combat drills. Over the years, these exercises evolved into a complete martial arts system. At Shaolin, martial arts became both a means of self-defense and a spiritual practice. Every move carried Buddhist principles: patience, humility, and self-control. But when the temple came under attack from bandits or warlords, the monks proved their skills in real combat. Their bravery became famous across China. By the Tang dynasty, between 618 and 907 CE, the Shaolin monks had earned such respect that Emperor Taizong honored them for their role in helping defeat rebels. From Shaolin came a variety of distinct styles, many inspired by the movements of animals. The tiger style focused on raw strength and fierce attacks, the crane on balance and grace, the snake on precision, the leopard on speed, and the dragon on spirit and power. Each style carried its own philosophy, breathing methods, and fighting techniques. Shaolin Kung Fu was not just about bare-handed fighting. The monks trained with dozens of weapons. The staff or gun was known as the father of all weapons. The straight sword jian was called the gentleman of weapons for its elegance. The dao, a curved broadsword, was powerful and effective for slashing. The spear Chang earned the title King of Weapons for its reach and versatility. Over time, Kung Fu spread far beyond the temple walls. In the north, styles developed with long-range movements, high kicks and wide stances. In the south, styles favored strong-rooted positions and short, explosive strikes. In many places, these arts were passed down secretly from teacher to student, often within families or close-knit communities. The Ming dynasty, which lasted from 1368 to 1644, is often called the Golden Age of Chinese martial arts. Military leaders encouraged martial training, and kung fu schools flourished. A famous general, Qi Jiguang, wrote a military manual called Ji Xiaoxin Shu that detailed unarmed combat and weapon use. Public demonstrations of martial arts became popular at festivals, and many masters became legendary figures in their own time. The Qing dynasty, from 1644 to 1912, brought new challenges. The ruling Manchu government feared that martial arts schools might inspire rebellion. Many were closed, forcing some masters to continue teaching in secret. Kung Fu also became tied to resistance movements, and secret societies used it as both a fighting system and a symbol of defiance. Folk heroes like Wang Fei Hung and Huo Yuanjia became widely celebrated for their courage, defending the weak and promoting justice. By the late 1800s, China was facing foreign invasions, political turmoil, and rapid modernization. Firearms were replacing traditional weapons, and the role of Kung Fu in warfare was changing. Some masters worked hard to keep the old traditions alive, while others began adapting the art for public performances, health training, and sport. This was the moment when Kung Fu stood on the edge of transformation, ready to move from remote villages and temple courtyards into cities, schools, and eventually the entire world. By the end of the 1800s, China was facing turbulent times. Foreign powers had forced unfair trade deals onto the nation, while internal rebellions tore at its unity. The traditional way of life was under pressure, and martial arts, once central to defense, were being overshadowed by modern weapons like guns. Many wondered if Kung Fu still had a role in a changing world, yet Kung Fu survived because it was more than just a method of fighting. Masters saw it as a living piece of Chinese heritage, something that could build strength, discipline, and pride. They began teaching it openly in schools, blending self-defense with lessons in fitness and character. In the early 1900s, martial arts became tied to a rising sense of national pride. China had endured humiliation from foreign invasions, and leaders began to see Kung Fu as a way to restore confidence among the people. One figure stood out during this time, Huo Yuanjia. In 1910, he founded the Qinwu Athletic Association, and his victories against foreign fighters turned him into a national hero. His success inspired many to see martial arts not just as a skill, but as a symbol of cultural strength and resistance. By the late 1800s, China faced foreign invasions and internal instability. Firearms were replacing swords and spears, changing the role of martial arts in warfare. Some masters worked to preserve the old traditions, others adapted them for performance, health, or sport. This was the turning point when Kung Fu began transitioning from a purely combative skill to a cultural treasure. At the dawn of the 20th century, many saw Kung Fu as a way to revive national pride. After years of foreign domination, it became a symbol of Chinese strength. Huo Yuanjia's victories over foreign fighters made him a national hero, and in 1910 he founded the Qinwu Athletic Association to promote martial training. During the Republican period, 1912-1949, martial arts became more public. Tournaments were organized, and the Guoshu movement sought to unify styles under a national system. Progress was disrupted by political unrest and the Japanese invasion in the 1930s, but the tradition survived. After the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the government promoted martial arts for health and performance, standardizing them into modern wushu. Wushu showcased acrobatics, high jumps, and graceful forms for competition, but left out many dangerous combat techniques. Outside China, Kung Fu followed a different path. Chinese communities in Southeast Asia, North America, and Europe kept traditional training alive. Hong Kong became a key center for martial arts, both in schools and in the film industry. The 1960s and 1970s saw global icons like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and later Jet Li bring Kung Fu to audiences worldwide. Bruce Lee, trained in Wing Chun under Ip Man, developed his own philosophy called Jeet Kune Do, which rejected rigid styles in favor of adaptability. Through his films, he not only demonstrated incredible skill, but also inspired millions with the deeper values of discipline, self-expression, and self-mastery. As Kung Fu spread internationally, it adapted to many goals. Some schools focused on realistic self-defense, others on preserving traditional forms, and many embraced its health and philosophical benefits. In China, the Shaolin Temple saw a revival, restored as a cultural landmark. Shaolin monks toured the world, demonstrating a mix of acrobatics, weapons, and meditative practices, renewing global interest in the art's spiritual roots. Kung Fu's influence reached beyond martial practice, shaping cinema, television, literature, video games, and even dance and theater. Tai Chi, a softer branch of Chinese martial arts, gained worldwide popularity for its gentle movements and health benefits. Today, millions of people practice Kung Fu across the globe. Some seek self-defense, others fitness, cultural connection, or personal growth. Through centuries of change, its essence remains: perseverance, discipline, respect, and harmony between body and mind. From primitive survival techniques to the refined traditions of Shaolin, from periods of national struggle to the bright lights of Hollywood, Kung Fu has endured because it is more than a fighting style. It is a way of living, combining history, philosophy, and the human desire to grow stronger in every sense. Kung Fu's journey mirrors the history of China itself, shaped by hardship, enriched by wisdom, and carried forward by those who value its spirit. It has transformed from a battlefield necessity into a universal language of strength, balance, and peace, and its legacy continues to inspire people everywhere.